Thank you all for joining us today. People were with us yesterday. We had such a beautiful day. We had 3 divine discussions, and today is going to be the same. We're going to be having different conversations with different people throughout the day, and this is our very first session of the day. So welcome to Divine Design. It's going to be absolutely incredible today, and I'm really excited about the people that we have coming on the stage and really the conversation that's getting ready to take place, because we're going to be talking about building a brand. And I think lots of people in this room, maybe you're a business owner, maybe you're an entrepreneur, maybe you're just trying to figure out, is this something I want to step into? Do I want to build something from the ground up? And we've just got some incredible people that are going to be with us today that are going to be in the conversation. And so we've got Luke Berry, our worship director, who's going to be leading the panel today, leading this conversation. And part of our conversation today will be Pedro Tuma. He is the founder of Friends and Family. He's the CEO of Good Publishing Company. I also call him my BFF. So we share a birthday, kind of. And so I'm excited to hear from him. We've also have Sam Gualtieri, the genius himself. He's the creative director of the Good Publishing Company, also the founder of Pop Signs Co. And we also got Pastor Terrance and Pastor Johanne with us. They are the founder of Cool Creative. They are creatives, entrepreneurs, pastors. They lead this movement called Cool, which means create out of love. And I'm really excited about what they're getting ready to share with us. And so lean in. I really believe that you're going to learn something from this conversation, that you're going to get something from this conversation. Come on, so why don't we make some noise for our incredible panelists today?
Come on, give it up for Manu. She kept it short this morning. We said as the day went on yesterday, her intros went longer and longer, but in the best way. They were epic. Good to see everybody. As Manu said, welcome to Divine Design. This is day 2. I absolutely loved yesterday. We had 3 incredible sessions and just amazing conversation. And for me, I said it to you guys earlier this morning. I don't know if there are a few things I enjoy more than a good conversation. And so I'm really pumped to get to chat with all of you, and I'm glad that you're all in the room. As Manu said, we are talking about building a brand. And so I thought that the best way to kick it off, I can't help myself. I'm a philosophy guy. And so we got to start by defining terms to figure out what we're talking about here. So what does this mean? What is a brand? And what are we talking about when we're talking about building a brand? And I want to throw it to Sam, because Sam's a thinker. He's a smart guy. And you've also got a wide range of experience. And we've had a lot of combos like this. And so you went from a church to an agency to a church to running a company and now creative directing GPC. And so you got a lot going on. You're also an artist and doing stuff here for Basil. It's going to be awesome.
That's right. I was actually an artist first, to be honest with you.
Right. You went to school for art.
And then I departed from that and I went all commercial. And now I'm finding my way back.
I know. It's been, what, 10 years?
Yeah, over 10 years.
It's incredible. And, so exciting.
So
this week's going to be good. But what do you think about what?
Thinking's my specialty for sure.
Oh, yeah, for sure. That's really your art form is thought.
Come to my show.
Yeah.
Think a lot.
But branding, what is a brand? What are we talking about?
Yeah, this is cool. I was actually thinking a lot about this because we actually use the term branding, but it's actually short for, brand identity. And so I think the key word that, that hits hard there is the identity. It's when you think about it, a brand is the identity that you're forming for the public, for the people that are going to consume or interact with whatever it is that you're creating. And so, there's so much that goes into identity, right? And the question of identity, you can unpack that for days. But there's so many core elements that, you can break down that build an identity. We have our external appearance, I have an identity. This is what I look like or what I project that I want people to see me as. And it's the same with, a brand that you're building. You have the look, the fonts that you choose, they all have a personality to them. They all have a look. They have something that's on the external that people are going to get at a glance. But then there's all the other types of information that disseminate from there when you interact with that brand. It's the tone. Does it have a sense of humor or not? Is it masculine? Is it feminine? Like there's all these things. The same. I think it's almost identical if you can ask yourself the question like, what goes into the human identity? Right. Well, it's a mirror image. You're building an identity that you want to be an expression of something that you're creating.
I love that. It's so clear. And I love the analogy of just your personal identity. If you think of a brand that way, it can help you really get your head around what that means. And I love this thought that you have a brand whether you want to or not. So personally, it's like you might go, I don't care how I dress. Well, that's part of your brand is going like, I just wear whatever, So
you're a punk skater.
Exactly. Like me. I'm going to jump on the half pipe here in a second, but I can't skate at all. But no, I like this idea. And so I think there are companies that maybe care a lot about what they're doing, what they're making, and go like, man, the branding marketing conversation is not really for me. But in reality, you're doing this whether you want to or not, and whether you like it or not. It's a reality of building something. And so I love that, defining what a brand is. What does it look like to build a brand? What are those steps? I think practically we got people streaming and people in the room that are looking to build something, and maybe they have done that or in the process of doing that, or maybe it's just a dream or vision that they have. How do you do that? I want this combo to be a combination of some ideas, but also some practical steps, like how do we get there? Maybe Terrance and Johanne, if you guys want to jump in.
Yeah, I can jump in on that. I think what you were talking about is really you can build a brand by default or by design, right? It's going to happen. People are going to perceive. That's really, in essence, what a brand is. That's what you're talking about. Identity is, it's how people perceive your product, your business, whatever it is that you're putting out there. How to build a brand is a very long question, right?
Right.
So it's a loaded question, but we can start by it. What it's not, how to not do it is to not start with a logo. It's not, you don't have a brand because you designed a logo.
Right.
Right. So
right.
So don't do that.
Thank you for saying that.
It starts with asking, why you're doing what you're doing, right? Yeah. But then why are you doing it? Who are you serving? What problem is it solving? And all of those things. And what space is it going to take in the market? That's called brand positioning, right? And then once you start to really dive into all those things, that's when you can start to formulate a brand. One thing I would say is that how to build a brand, first thing is time. You can't rush that process because in order for you to really answer those questions and do the work, it takes time. Yeah. I know when we did, I've worked at so many agencies, but one of the best ones was Landor. They are kind of like the architects of brands in the entire world, like in history, right? And so they, one of the first things we would do is brand immersions. We'd get a client, we'd get a brief, whatever. We would go wherever they were. It could be, it was great when it was like in the Caribbean or somewhere fun, right? Yeah. So we would go and spend like a week in their environment and literally listen, breathe. I would go through the senses. What do I smell? What do I see? What do I touch? What do I taste? What do I hear? And document all of those things because those are all things that are going to inform the brand. Yep. And then you interview all of the stakeholders, of course. So if you're doing it, you have a team, you want to make sure you get everybody's perspective and you start to get, it's all information gathering. And then because we're in this digital social age, we've got this great thing called social media, which we didn't back when I started. And you do what's called social listening. So you start to listen to people, your target audience, other brands, you do the, competitive research. All of those things are important to building a brand.
Come on.
I can just that was really good.
I just want to pause for applause right there. Thank you for coming to Johanne's masterclass on branding.
I just like to hear her talk. It's so awesome. So she gave you a lot of the practicals. Because I'm a pastor, I can't help it. I got to interject some spiritual stuff kind of on it a little bit. I love the fact that when we talk about building something, I often, and biblically, I start at the end of something before I start at the beginning.
Great.
Even the first passage you'll hear in the Bible is in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. But then he takes all this time to talk about how he developed the earth. He talks about the 6 days and then the seventh he rests. But so you're telling me you took all this time to develop heaven, but it says in the beginning, earth. It says in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. But you take all this time to tell me about earth and you take no time to tell me about heaven. What does that tell me? Heaven is the end game, right? It says, I'm going to show you the end, and the end is going to inform how I dictate or how I design the beginning.
Great.
So you got to really have a vision for it. Now, I've often said it like this. It's like there's no airplane on the planet that takes off without knowing where it's going to land.
That's right.
Air traffic control knows where that thing is going to touch down before it ever takes off. And I think a lot of people, like, they're like, man, I got a logo, I got a brand. No. You don't. A logo is not the start of a brand at all. A vision is the start of a brand.
Great.
So
good. I love all that you're saying. And it reminds me of this. I've heard it framed this way. The conversation around branding and running a company is the tension between ego and empathy. So ego, not in the sense of being egotistical or self-obsessed, though that's probably something that happens. More in the sense of being internally focused. Who are we? What do we want to do? What are we making? And of course, you need to be very careful and excellent in the details of your products or your services. But really, a brand is a relationship. And I love what you're saying about time. The same way forming a human relationship takes time. Building brand equity and getting buy-in from people takes time. They have to get to know you, and you need to get to know them as well. And so maybe Pedro, I think friends and family speak so much to this concept because really the whole heart of friends and family is about kindness to people, you know? And so what do you see in this conversation around ego and empathy and running a company, building a brand?
Yeah, I think for me, I started off with designing, and I had a design agency building other brands. So I've done that for about 10 years, and I could have started a brand for myself 10 years ago or whatever, but I knew that when I started a brand, I wanted it to have meaning and purpose. Like, I didn't want to just make cool clothes just to make cool clothes. I want it to be cool and I want it to be of quality, but I knew that whatever I worked on, I wanted it to have meaning and purpose, that it meant something to someone, that it carried a message, that it would mean something to the person wearing it or to the person on the street who saw that person wearing it. So when I go into the design process of the brand, I always keep that in mind. And it's kind of hard, that tension of putting what I like, and then also putting out what you're saying is like listening to what the people want, what the people like. So I do a little bit of both. I think like this current collection that I'm doing, I did a lot of it of like what I want to wear, because like the past couple things, like I don't really wear a lot of my own stuff. So I want to start creating stuff that I wear.
That's not ego.
But yeah, I think I'm at a point in my life where whatever it is I'm working on, whether it's like the good publishing company or friends and family, like I want it to have meaning and purpose.
I love that. And yeah, so what you're saying is you knew you wanted to start a brand, but you didn't want to start until you had a clear vision of what that was all about, right? You wanted to understand the purpose before you jumped into it. And I like what you're saying. You're making stuff that you like and you want to wear, but you understand that there's this tension of knowing what people want as well. And I think it kind of ties into what Camilo was talking about in our conversation last night, in understanding, say, what's on the radio or what people are listening to or what's trending or, you know, what's working, and being aware of that, but not being boxed in to go, I have to be that now, or I have to imitate or copy that. And so I think it's a tension because, Johanne, you were saying you're doing market research, you're understanding, you're doing social listening to understand what people are into, but then you've got to know who you are and just be true to that. And I think where you can be confident is knowing there are a lot of people like Pedro Tuma out there where there's no one quite like you, but there are people that align in what you like to wear, they like to wear too. And I think we live in a world where you don't need a million people necessarily to align with your brand. I think if you can get 1,000 people or 10,000 people that go, I'm really into what you're doing,
I think
you can
what
go
you're
somewhere.
touching on is really important because I think we can all agree that every great brand is authentic, right? And so in order for us to get to that place of authenticity, that's why it's so important to listen, to research, to answer those questions, because you get there through once you start to realize, oh, okay, you get those aha moments, and that's what gets you there. And that's why those brands that are authentic, they last, they connect, because they've gotten to something that touches on something real. And whether or not you buy into it or you like his style, there's something about the realness of it that you connect with. And that's what people are drawn to. And that's why they'll buy one, because they connect to authenticity.
I think it's important to say that if you're starting a brand, to be authentic to the message that you're putting out. Like what you're saying, the most successful brands and the brands that I've enjoyed the most, if you tie it back to the owner or the person who started the brand, like I think of, like growing up, I really liked this brand called The Hundreds. They're very authentic to surf culture, skate culture, but that's who they were since they were kids. It's like, these are guys who, that's what they were about. So their message is real, it's authentic. Thinking about and looking at this space, like someone like Virgil, like you look at Louis Vuitton, what it is right now, that's not what Louis Vuitton was 5 or 10 years ago. He inserted his style, his authenticity into it, of where he comes from, what he grew up like, the streetwear world, and he inserted that into Louis Vuitton and made it what it is today. So I think it's important that to be authentic to what your message is when building a brand, to who you are.
And I love that, because I think each of us are uniquely created to tell a divine story. I just think it's so beautiful because, you think about a cat like Virgil, but I could go across every person on this stage. I think the story you have to start thinking about is not the story of you, but the story you were designed to tell.
That's great.
Right? Like I've always said that we're all creative aspects of the Creator God.
Yep.
So I actually like to talk to people that I don't know, because I feel like I can find out something about God just by talking to you. There's a unique story that no one else on this planet can tell but you specifically. So when I think about it, when I think about my brand, I'm not really trying to tell my story. I'm trying to tell the story I was designed to tell. So when we came up with Cool Creative, Create Out of Love, I feel like the story that we're telling about God, not ourselves, it's a love story. So even in the branding, like, for example, my wife has this belt on right now. And you see the numbers 082507. Well, if our story is a love story, that number has significance. That's the date that we got married. That's the date that our
I
love
did it
was.
so I would never forget the date. That's really what that was about.
But it's the
You can
date
just check whenever you need to. Yeah.
It's the date that the love was solidified. And once again, it transcends and it permeates through every area of the brand, because we know that whatever we put out, whether it's a jacket, whether it's a belt, whether it's a church service, whether it's a conversation, we were designed to tell a love story.
Yes.
So
It's incredible. I think story is so important, and you guys are saying too much for me to even get to comment on here. I like what you're saying, Terrance, about the idea. This space is called Divine Design, and we're talking about a space where faith and art collide. The whole concept is that we were created by God, and what you're saying is that each of us in our soul, we have a piece of that divine nature.
That's right.
And the most beautiful thing we can do is just release that and express that, There's this concept, in Christianity. It's like, why are we all here? We're here to glorify God. And that's cool. but what in the world does that mean? I preached a message a couple of years ago called Beauty and Basketball. You remember that? No, you don't. Okay, no, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. And it's a bizarre title, but the whole concept.
Should have been Love and Basketball. It would have been better.
What? Love and Basketball?
Yeah.
Great.
Sorry.
No, I should have called it that. I'm going to go back. We can edit on YouTube the title.
Yeah.
Just go back. Okay.
Just cut it out. The whole concept, though, is like, what does it mean to glorify God? And the answer I came to just in studying is that glorifying God is about experiencing and expressing the fullness of God. Of course, none of us can do that individually. God is beyond any one of our individual, capacity to understand him or to experience him. But that's the beauty of the church as well, as in community. We're experiencing God, but then we're also expressing, and the way we express that is unique. I also like what you're saying, Pedro, about authenticity. And I think authenticity is the part of your brand that you control. You control whether you're authentic to your purpose and your mission or not. Then the other side of that is relevance, and relevance is really determined by the people that are interacting with your brand. So you can be authentic, and they decide whether that's connecting with them or not, and that's cool. All right, those are my comments on what you're saying. Now I'm going to let the experts talk again because I don't know what I'm talking about. So I kind of want to hear a little bit of your stories, but maybe through the lens of, we know that there's no formula for doing this. There's no one way. There are best practices and there are things you can learn from everybody. But each story is unique. And I know that on your journeys of building your brands and building your companies, you've encountered some challenges and obstacles and difficulties along the way, probably every week, if not every day. So what does that look like for you? And maybe try to frame it in a way where what can someone else learn from the obstacles that you've gone through and how you overcame those things?
Man, I think in terms of branding, the design company started first. So the brand was Cool Creative. Well, it still is, but then, it was like, what was it, 7-8 years? We were running the company, everything's great. And then this guy comes and say, hey, we're gonna start a church. And guess what the name is? Cool Church. I'm like, what? Like, when was this decided? Like, you can't.
God did it.
Right? And it was just like, but how? I come from, I'm spiritual, all that good stuff, but I didn't work in the church. So my background and what I was doing and still doing is I was like a design kid. I worked in agencies my entire life. I'm like true to this. And rule number 1 is you do not cannibalize a brand,
Right.
which means
Your church is going to ruin my brand.
like you cannot use the same brand for different things. And keep keep that thought on the side, different things, right? So he comes and he says, cool. And not only that, you can't take something that is non-religious and insert religion into it. So I had come from this like corporate background. You never bring anything spiritual into it, like overtly. So I almost had a panic attack. I was like, we've just destroyed the whole brand.
And sidebar, there were people on both sides, the professional and the spirituals, like, you can't do that. There are people on the church side saying that won't work. There are people on the corporate side saying you can't do that.
Yeah.
It's gonna do. So you just gotta understand, we're getting it from both sides about it.
Yeah. And so in me, the brander in me, the corporate person in me was like, we're done. This cannot happen. And I just remember praying and I was like, God, what are we gonna do? I'm down for whatever, me and you were cool, but this just doesn't sound right. And I felt in my spirit, he said, give me the brand and I'm gonna make it bigger than anything you could have done with it alone. And I guess this is to say that there are rules, right? There are rules in this branding thing. I think that you can absolutely break them, but if you're going to break them, I would say let God show you how to break them. And so that's where we're at.
And I fully believe the authenticity of who we are translated through the brand. So once again, people try to tell you have to be one thing or you have to be the other. I'm like, man, I'm both but Jesus first. You know what I'm saying? Like, you can be all you were designed to be. And at the end of the day, if it works, it'll work.
It'll work.
Right.
You know?
And I think, but I also don't want you to take that and say, oh, I don't have to focus.
Yeah.
I could do all these different things, because I also see that a lot. And what ends up happening is that the brand never has a clear, definitive voice. It's hard to build the brand. It's expensive, because when you don't know, when you're not honing in or focusing in on something, it costs you money. Right. Great example, I would say, is if Facebook. So Facebook ads. If you've ever done a Facebook ad, if you haven't, I want you to do this exercise. Go in and try to create an ad. And it could be about anything. Even if you don't have a business, just do the ad. Facebook is going to ask you to check box all these different things, like who are you trying to target? Where do they live? What are their likes? What's their personality type? All of those things. And you're going to see, as you check boxes, as if you don't check boxes, if you're not as specific as you can be, that number gets bigger and bigger, meaning you're going to have to spend more money, is what I'm trying to get at. The more specific you are, that budget goes lower per click. I think that's a great visual for you to understand that the more focused you are, the less it's going to cost you to market it, but also it's going to be easier for you to get your message out there. So when we say, cool, our challenge was church, fashion, business, all those things. It's not that, oh, you can do everything, but there is a thread.
Right. And here's the practical rule that we follow as we continue to expand the business, the church, the practical side, the spiritual side. And this is a rule we live by. Do not create what you cannot sustain.
Yes.
If you're gonna open up a new branch, make sure you have something to undergird it to be able to sustain it. Make sure you have the proper systems in place. Do not create what you can't sustain.
Yeah.
So
There's so much there. I love what you guys are saying. Sidebar, Facebook knows more about all of us than we know about ourselves.
Facts.
But you can use that to help you in business. I love what you're saying about knowing the rules and also feeling free to break them. Your story, again, is not a formula, and there's no like, oh, okay, Terrance and Johanne did it, so I'll do it exactly the same way. It doesn't work that way. But one of my favorite quotes about art is Pablo Picasso. He said, learn the rules like a professional so you can break them like an artist. So I think it's not helpful to go, well, I don't need to know anything about how a clothing brand works. I'll just make it up as I go. That doesn't help you.
That won't help.
But learning how it's been done doesn't mean that's how you have to do it. But understanding that is going to help you do it in the way that's unique to you. Sam, you've been quiet over there. We haven't heard from you since the beginning.
A lot.
It's partially my fault. It's my job to make sure that you get a chance to talk.
I'm just listening. I mean, they're sharing so much gold and with such clarity. I mean, that was beautiful. Everything that you're sharing and giving such a great illustration of how to connect those concepts together. Those are complicated concepts to understand. So
Absolutely. And I just want to get you to weigh in on the same thought of obstacles that you've run into. Like we said, you've done a lot of different creative things over the past, really more than a decade. And you've been in so many different spaces. What are some challenges you've run into that you think people could learn from, and maybe some ways of tackling, some strategies to take those things on? I'm sure you've gotten better as you've gotten older at dealing with challenges and problems that come your way.
Yeah, definitely. The two things that are going through my head right now is that in the context of branding, or the context of building a brand, a company, a story that you're telling, it's really a framework of telling a story in a consistent way. And so if you can imagine your brand as a character in a story, and what you're trying to do is you're trying to invite other people who connect with that story in, and they play a part as well. And we together are trying to work towards a common goal. And I think one of the big obstacles at the forefront is not knowing what the problem is that you're trying to solve within the thing that you're trying to build. Sometimes we start something and we're like, I just really like doing this. And I think this is a really good product or something that people are going to love this, but you're not clear on what the problem is, and whatever the thing is that you're doing, whether it's a church or whether it's a product company or whether it's e-com or whether it's traditional or whether it's being a visual artist, there is always a way of framing the problem that your audience has, and then on the other side of it, it's knowing who those people are that you're solving that problem for. And so you have these two parallels that help to narrow that audience way down, because if you're not very clear on those two things from the get-go, you do start to just get real, too creative. Everyone hates the feeling of staring at a blank canvas. And I think one of the easiest ways to get moving in the right direction, especially when you're getting started or if you're getting stuck, is to go back to those two fundamental questions and ask yourself, well, what's the problem that I actually solve? And somewhere along the lines, you've gotten blurry on that, or you haven't answered that question with such clarity that you can answer that the same way every time. Or if you work with a large team, maybe only a few people know what the answer to that question is, but everybody needs to know the answer to that question so that we're all working on the same end task. And then who are we solving that for is going to change the expression of what it is that you're building too. I use the analogy a lot. If you're creating, let's pick a product. If you're creating T-shirts for teenage kids who are into metal, your brand is going to look a lot different than if you're creating, fashion for people in an older, generation that live in Idaho. So yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I was thinking.
Great
example. That was the brand right there,
Yep.
Chico's.
Yep.
So knowing who you create for helps to shape the messaging and how you're going to express your brand as well. So kind of putting those two things together helps you to point that compass towards where you're heading.
Absolutely. Pedro, you want to jump in?
Yeah. I think for me, what I could speak on is just personal experience of what's been the hardest thing and the challenges of building a brand. And I think there's different stages to it, right? I think for me in the beginning, it was this whole idea of friends and family for me came actually from a series of talks that we did a couple years ago, the God Dream, which was life changing. And that for me was I know if I ever am gonna start a brand, it's now, and that's what I really felt strong about. But the challenges that we've had is in the beginning, it's oh, I don't have the resources, or I don't have enough money to start a brand, or how am I gonna pay to get a website done? And those are all thoughts that were going through my head at that time. And then I remember clearly speaking to a friend of mine. He's, same age as me, graduated together, but he's very successful at a young age. And so I talked to him a lot, and I asked him, hey, what, I don't have the money to start this brand, and, what do you think I should do? And he's like, if you really want to do it and you really want to start this brand and you only had $1,000, how would you make it happen? And that has stuck with me even to this day, right? It's don't focus on what you don't have, focus on what you do have and how can you make that work,
Awesome.
right? And then even from there, it's okay, so I actually made it happen with less than $1,000. So I literally built a brand website with less than $1,000. But then it's that whole thought of, and I was very open with Andy said something yesterday that's I never thought of, but it's my creative process. I'm very open with it, right?
So
I
are
want
you getting
people,
attacked right now?
Yeah.
Okay, it's all good.
I didn't know.
know.
You become a ninja.
I didn't know. Yeah, are you having a spiritual attack,
Yeah.
or is this? We can't see what's in front of you, but yeah, continue. Sorry.
Yeah. So I've spoken about it before, and it's this whole thought of when I launch is anybody gonna care? There's so many brands that launch every day. It's am I just gonna be another brand? Are people gonna buy it? Are people gonna care? So getting over that hump as well, it's and I got through that, and this is how authentic the brand is. The way I got through that was through friends and family. People texting me, calling me, saying you have to do this, we believe in you. Then the next stage is okay, we launch and everything.
This is awesome.
That little gnat has a
Holly,
brand.
you gotta take care of these flies in here, man.
Oh God, it's over here now.
Under construction. Right.
This is ridiculous.
Yeah. So then, I think, and this is the part that I think could help a lot of people. I think launching a brand is the easy part. I think sometimes people look at it as like that's the hardest part. For me, it was not just for me, but I think the easy part is launching, putting your idea out there, creating the brand. I think the hardest part is sustaining it. There you go. Right? Like collection one is cool. Yep. My friends are gonna support it. My family's gonna support it. Right. Now, how do I get people who are not my friends, who are not my family, to continue to support? Right? It's like you've been wearing the same brand for, at least for me, it's like I wear the same thing I've been wearing for 10 years. It's like, those are the brands I support. Why are you gonna leave that now to come and support a brand you've never heard of? And I think that's the challenge. And I think the way you get over that is through consistency, right? And then that's where it comes in that it gets expensive. So for me, I started a brand about 10 years ago as a kids brand. Still to this day, I think it's the greatest work I've ever done. I was super excited about it. Probably sold like 5 t-shirts. That's a whole nother story.
And 2 of them were for your kids.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
Not even, I didn't even have kids.
Oh no, you had 1, I'm sorry. Yeah.
So I was like super excited about it. We made all this product. There wasn't even social media back then. It's like we got on like mom blogs and Yahoo blogs. So I was like, yo, we're gonna sell out first day. So excited. We launch, nothing happens. I literally had inventory in my garage for 5 years.
Jeez.
Like, and because it didn't sell, we stopped and we didn't make collection 2, right? So when I started Friends and Family, I made a commitment. I was like, the only way that people are gonna support this, that people are gonna believe in this, is if I'm consistent with it, right? So if collection 1 only sells 5 t-shirts, collection 2 is already in the works, right? And I think that is what's turned people into just from being like spectators of the brand to believing in what we're doing.
It's very good. Awesome.
Can I add something to the expensive part?
Yes.
I remember I did a course kind of thing at Goldman Sachs. It was like a business accelerator, and one of the first exercises that they gave us was they gave us all a $500,000 check. It wasn't real, otherwise I would have been out.
Yeah, we'd have been.
Otherwise, I would have been
good,
right? I'm out.
Yeah.
So, and literally we were asked to spend it. And in the class, you had multi-million-dollar companies, all of this, and then us, but and no one, not a single person could spend it all. I say that to say, money is not your problem. Money is not your problem. Knowing what to do, vision, direction, focus is the problem.
100%, yeah. Well, I mean, we've all done our fair share of work with Goldman Sachs. They're wonderful people over there. Just kidding, man. It's a big name to drop. But no, I absolutely agree. And Pedro, that's where you started, is this idea of course, there's a level of fear. There's a level of insecurity. I think that's been a thread across all day yesterday. Creative work, it's vulnerability, it's putting yourself out there. But then there can be this lie that I don't have what it takes, and the problem is resources, or the problem is connections. Of course, having a lot of all those things is very helpful, but in reality, if you don't have clarity, you don't have a vision, you don't know what you want to do, it doesn't matter, right? And so I think I totally agree. The most important thing is knowing why you're doing what you're doing and believing in it and caring about it, and that's what people connect with. There are brands that I don't, maybe I don't have a piece from them yet. Some brands I'm waiting to make a little bit more money as I get older in life. I have vision to aspire to, but no, they're brands that I respect and I care about because I really like their story. There may be brands I don't even necessarily want to wear, but that authenticity of who they are really speaks to me and inspires me in the work that I do. I know that doesn't help their bottom line, but it helps me be inspired in life. We're gonna wrap up in a minute here. I have two more questions. This may be quick, but just what is a brand that inspires you and why? Sam's just grinning at me, refuses to talk. You know?
I mean, yeah.
Thinking of something really obscure to say.
Yeah. It's like an NFT, you know? Sam, stop trying to teach everyone about NFTs, man. We get it.
I'm on the NFTs.
Oh no, we can pivot if you want. We can talk about NFTs.
I mean, I can go there too. Okay.
That's Saturday morning. We're gonna do an NFT session.
Let's go. This should be an NFT. Okay. Anyways, the brand. I wear the brands that inspire me. Like I'm a Nike guy.
Terrance,
okay?
take your foot off the
Sorry.
table.
No, you're
Jerry,
good.
wherever you are. I'm sorry, Jerry.
We're in
I'm
a
sorry.
construction site.
Who are you?
Sorry.
Who
Did you
taught
say
you?
Nike?
Who
Yeah,
taught you
Nike.
this?
So
You said Nike.
yes.
Okay.
Nike.
Cool.
Nike.
Growing up,
how do you actually? Is it Nike or Nike?
Growing up in South Africa,
Or Nike?
They called it Nike.
Sorry.
And when I
Did
moved
they?
here, I was very
Nike.
confused by Nike.
Okay. So
Very confused, right?
Anyway, continue.
So I like this brand. And you know, if you know enough about the brand, right? It's the goddess of victory, right? You feel like you can win when you wear it. The swoosh is like motion, right? But then the best part of their brand is like, just do it. Just do it. So I think that the thing that has always attracted me, I'm like, checks over stripes all day. I'm just kidding. I love it all. But the thing that inspired me as a kid is it gave me a feeling like, and I'm a like clown myself a little bit, but as the chubby kid growing up on the block, I felt like if I put on a pair of Nikes, I could win. I felt like if I put on a pair of Nikes, I could jump higher. And I promise you, it wouldn't have even been like a hard feat to jump higher because I was only getting 2 inches off the ground anyway. I felt like I couldn't just sit back and sulk about not getting picked. I felt like I had to get in the game. Why do I like Nike? I like the feeling that it gives me. And the brands that I'm connected to the most, man, they make me feel better about myself, and they make me feel like I can do things that in my normal self I feel like I couldn't do. So
Love it.
Amazing.
I think for I love that you kept saying feel because great brands do that.
Yeah.
Like they make you feel something, which is why brand Jesus is the greatest because they makes
Let's
you
go.
feel something, right? And I mean, let's clap for that for Jesus, right?
go.
Brand Jesus. I've never heard that in my life.
Like if
Clap
we
for
gonna
brand
clap
Jesus,
for anything,
everybody.
we gonna clap for that, right?
I'm gonna start a company called Brand Jesus.
and that's the sound that goes with
That's
it.
the
Right.
sound.
Yeah.
And it will flop.
What
on
does
the
it
first
smell
collection.
like?
What does it
Frankincense and
And
myrrh.
myrrh.
Frankincense and myrrh.
Yeah.
Yeah, it smells like
That's
a
right.
sweet
What does it
incense
taste
that
like?
rises day
Yes,
and night.
Yes. I love this. It's a
What do
good
we-
exercise, right? Just to
Tastes
really
like
understand.
unleavened bread.
Oh,
Sorry.
okay.
Sorry.
This-
Church
Tastes
jokes.
like-
exactly. We're derailing into bizarre,
Church jokes.
obscure church references
Church kids,
now.
sorry.
Yeah.
So,
Feeling.
as I think about a brand that inspires me, it's actually New York. I am from New York, but
New Yorker.
but I should get that should get the sound.
Say coffee one time. I like the way you say coffee.
No,
Say it.
no,
Say
I'm
it.
not your
She said,
clown. I'm not
coffee.
your muse.
Coffee.
Coffee.
Me. Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
The sound.
So New York. I love New York as a brand. I love the brand of New York. There is a brand mark, but when you think of New York, you already have an association to it, right? It already makes you feel something, and you can see it. And I love, the branding itself. But one of my favorite New York designers. She's probably the best brander of all time, Paula Scher. And she is, I remember I've heard her speak several times, and she was like, my dream job would be to be the art director of New York. And I've studied her work, and she, to me, exemplifies like brand New York. And when I experience her work, I feel it just makes sense for what New York is all about. So brand New York has always inspired me, and you just get it, right? As soon as you say New York, you can see it, you can feel it, you can smell it, you can go. And I will say there is an actual brand mark and all of that.
Yeah.
Yellow cab, that's a part of the brand
Right.
of New York. So that.
What a great kind of unexpected answer, but it's so true. I was just saying to Manu about this. Obviously, Manu is a Brooklyn girl, and I was talking to her 2 nights ago about how New York is, for me, top 3 coolest places you can say you're from. When it's like, hey, where are you from? I'm from New York, and it's like the coolest place ever. And I haven't thought of it in those terms of a brand. There's a whole tangent we could go on about the future of cities and startup cities and branding of cities as people get more and more remote. Can't get into it now. But I love what you're saying about the feeling of a brand. And I think that's been the journey, again, in my limited knowledge, the journey of branding over the past 100 years is understanding, back in 1900, they used to say, hey, use Pepsodent, it makes your teeth healthy. And no one cared, and something like 10% of Americans brush their teeth. And then people realized we got to sell an experience and a feeling, and this is what it's going to do. And so they started selling, hey, this is the fresh feeling in your mouth after you brush your teeth. And now, 98% of people do it.
I think part of what you're talking about is back then there was not much competition, which is also why branding became a thing too. Is in order for you to distinguish yourself and differentiate yourself, which is a huge part of branding that we don't even have time to go into. But you had to figure out ways to create unique selling points in order for somebody to choose you over every other toothpaste, since we're on the topic of teeth brightening. So there was only one toothpaste, so you could say brush your teeth and so they'll be clean with this. But now it's like, okay, well, what do I choose? And that's where you have to focus so that you can get that little niche.
Right, and get someone's attention. Pedro, what brand inspires you? Other than friends and family.
Right.
Like, the most inspiring brand to me is my own brand. Nothing really speaks to me more than me. Anyway, sorry.
I think every time I'm going to speak
this is outrageous. Pedro, if you don't get this under control, I'm going to kick you off the panel, okay?
I'm inspired by a lot of brands. But I think what inspires me about brands is their attention to detail. Yeah. Any brand that I see, and I could name specific, there's this brand called Kith. I think he is very, pays a lot of attention to details of what he creates, the excellence of it, the way it's constructed. And then that's what I'm attracted to, right? It's like, I don't know if we've spoke about this before, but the barber that I go to, it's like I go to him because he knows more than what he needs to know about being a barber. Yeah. And that stuff to me is attractive, right? It's like all he needs to know is how to fade me up and give me a haircut, but he knows the history of being a barber. He knows the instruments that he uses, the machines, the chair that he has. It's a vintage. I like stuff like that because I think that inspires me. I think Rich and DC do an amazing job at that as well. It's if you look around this space and every Sunday, it's the attention to details. You could go without it and probably nobody would notice, but it's inspiring to see that you care about that stuff. Yeah. And brands that do that is what makes me right now, this t-shirt I'm wearing is, I got to a point where I didn't like any of the t-shirts that were out there. Mm. So right now I'm creating 2 new t-shirts, and this is sample 3 that I'm wearing right now. And it's still not the perfect sample. And I want to get to that point where I care that much about the detail of the stuff that we put out.
It's so good. And I totally agree. It's the attention to detail, the level of care is what inspires and connects, whether people realize it or not. I think a lot of it's subconscious. Like you're saying, even with church, the average person walks in and probably doesn't notice the vast majority of the detail there, but there is this, it does shape your experience in this space. So whether you understand what it's doing to you or not, it's working. You know what I'm saying?
It makes all the difference, 100%.
Right. Sammy.
Boy, gonna end on a good note here.
We're not done. Are we done? Do we have to be done? You're good.
No, I mean, all these are such cool answers. And I mean, what I appreciate most about brands is the way they make me feel. And that, I think that's the most immediate and visceral response you can have. And I think it's the hardest to harness. And so successful brands to me like leave me with an impression whether or not like I really know the name. Then I'll learn the name eventually. Like that's their job, is to make sure that I remember what made me feel that way. But I'm in tune to that feeling that I'll remember that forever. You're talking about, VOUS. We're all here taking part of this. Like, VOUS has been one of the most incredibly, like, to every last minute detail, thought about how everything is going to make you feel, and that's why, one of the reasons why it's so memorable, and why, it's expressed in everything that we do. I was gonna kind of go the route where you were talking about like these kind of like small places that you go to. When my wife and I went to Italy, like we go to these like little tiny little pasta shops, these restaurants, and like I don't really remember the name. I remember what that food was like, because the product that created was so good. The end product made me feel, I had a response to it that I'm gonna carry with me, and I'm gonna be searching for another experience like that. And if I can't find one, guess what? I'm coming right back there. And that's, I think, the power of a brand too, is that if it's built on the right things, if it's built on a product that really does make a difference, or is really made well, you don't really need a $1,000 pair of pants or a shirt. But if it's made so well and it makes you feel so good, doesn't the value then equate to that? Isn't it worth that to you? Because it gives you kind of that lift in your spirit to help you to accomplish the things that you want to do.
Absolutely. Okay, we're going to wrap up. I have one last question for you. And really, I think this is something we're doing throughout these 3 days, which is just, there are people listening, there are people in the room that are looking to express themselves and to build a brand, to really just to express the creativity God's placed inside of them. What advice would you give to someone trying to do that? Anybody?
Yeah, I can start. Again, just back to my experience, I think what really helped me is just being committed before you even begin. Committing in your heart that you're gonna see this thing out, staying consistent with it, not allowing the lack of resources to hold you back. I think that's been probably the biggest thing for me, is that, like, that commitment that I made before I launched anything is what's kept me going even now. Not giving up. The thing is, when you launch a brand, the hardest part about launching a brand is getting people to believe in what you're doing. Yeah. The only way you're gonna get people to believe in what you're doing is through consistency.
Right.
And consistency will only come, collection 1 is cool, but then 2 and 3 and 4, like that's where it gets hard, and that's where you don't give up. And we said upstairs, like, if you don't quit, you win.
Right.
Yeah, let me just kind of piggyback on that, because that's the advice I would leave too, as it pertains to commitment. Man, we've been doing this for God knows how long now. It's definitely been over a decade as it pertains to like the fashion business, and the first one failed miserably, went up in a ball of flames, but we kept going. Oh God, don't even say the name. Okay, Rich was there. Okay,
was it Brand Jesus or no?
Brand not good. So
you don't want that one to go up in flames.
Yeah.
Okay.
We failed, man. And I'm proud to admit the failures. Today, you fail forward. Today, people see us in Macy's and stuff, and they're like, "Man, I can't believe you're there." I'm like, "Man, you had no idea what we had to go through to get there." So I've always said this: it's like, don't be a quitter, be a failure. Quitters never try again. Failures know what not to try again. So just keep moving forward, man. Because if you don't quit, you win.
Beautiful. I would say a few things. I would say there's something about velocity and getting going. You don't build velocity like in an instant. It's something that, if you're trying to move, like,
you got inertia.
Yeah, you got to get it. You got to get it in motion first. And so, they say, you can't steer if you're not moving. So you got to get moving first, or get going and then get better. It's a process. So many people like stay stagnant or stuck and don't ever start. Well, my advice is start. It might not. Iteration 1 isn't going to look like iteration 10, and that's a good thing. It's part of bringing people along the journey and documenting the process, because when you get to episode 10, you're going to look back to episode 1 and you're going to say, wow, not only does that suck, and that's kind of funny to look at, but it's also an inspiration to everybody who's followed me this far, because we can both look back and I can be grateful for where I've grown to, but I can also show you that I wasn't always where I am now, and that's where I started. And so, yeah, get going, get better. And then, there's this quote that I always remember, and it's a good joke never survives a committee of 10. And that means that, if you share your idea that you think is so good with too many people, everyone's going to speak into it, and everyone's going to change your mind. If you really believe in what you have, just go with that. Yeah, sure, have a couple trusted voices that that speak into what you're doing, and that's important. But trying to please everyone, you're going to end up pleasing no one.
Come on. All right, now I see what you were doing. You were saving all your stuff for the end. You just gave us 7 pithy quotes that were phenomenal. Like if you don't move, you can't steer. Joe, you want to close us out?
Advice. I guess I'm thinking about, I'm so into practical, like this is what you should do. So that's kind of where I'm coming from. I think you got to embrace technology in the best way that you can. The same way you open up, your toolbox, whether that looks like paint, a pen to write, whatever it is that you use to create, incorporate technology in a way. Technology has been the great equalizer, the great divider, the great shifter of things. So get to know it. We kind of whispered about NFTs. Whatever it is, you want to use it as a tool, because no one is going to use it like you. So think about your work dimensionally. How does it live, beyond just the surface? I think that can mean many things. Technologically, that can mean something. Spiritually, that can mean something. I think that's really important. And trust what God has placed in your heart. I'll give you an example of that. Years ago, not that many years ago, but maybe like 3-4 years ago, I had done an exhibition where you had to use your phones, QR codes weren't even really a thing. They were fairly new to the market. Now we can't live without these QR codes, right? It took a long time for general public to adopt them, but back when I did it, it was fairly new, and we had to explain what to do. So in the exhibition, in the gallery, you had to scan to see another dimension of the work. And it was cool, but it didn't take off. And I feel like if we were in our mindset today, that idea would have took off in a different way. And I think that back to what you're saying about consistency, had I kept pushing forward with that idea, who knows, right? I don't regret not going forward with it, because it is what it is. But I say that to say that you gotta trust what God has placed in your heart, because that instinct is, people will copy whatever, but they cannot copy that, because that is unique to you. So push on that.
Let's go. It's beautiful stuff. Thank you guys for all that you shared. I know it's so just fun for me to have the convo, so interesting and inspiring. And I think probably, now I have to start a brand at some point in my life, just because I was up here on the panel. I got to justify my spot up here.
You are a brand.
I am a brand. Yeah. No, I've been a brand. No, I don't know what that means. But I think if you take anything away from this, I think what I'm hearing again and again is that building a brand is going to require you believing in it, you committing to it, you going for it. And I think the time we live in, there's no end to the possibilities and the opportunities that surround us. I think what Joe's saying about technology, there are just endless possibilities for what you can do. And with social media, you can connect directly to people and you can build an audience. And you don't need to be a big fashion house or a big production studio. You know, I think we're moving beyond that phase of business. And so I just want to encourage you, whatever you're doing, whatever God's put in your heart, to go for it, to trust him, to listen. He'll lead you, and you're going to do it in a way that's unique and true to you, authentic to who you are. No one can do it like you. And so go for it. I'm going to pray for us, and then we're going to get out of here. Let's pray. God, we thank you so much for this time together and this incredible conversation. God, I thank you for the people up here on this stage, the people in this room, and everyone who's streaming live or listening after the fact. God, we just pray that the words spoken here would inspire people to do more with what you've given them. We know that we don't work and we don't build for ourselves and for our own status or money or for glory. We do it to glorify you, to honor you, to serve you, and to serve the people around us. And so we just pray that you would empower us like never before, that you would grace us and strengthen us for the work that you set in front of us. And I just pray for the best in front of every person that's listening. We pray it all in Jesus' name. Amen.